Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about Poor Things by Alasdair Baxter. Poor Things, the novel, opens slightly ahead of the story when a man took some documents out of a pile that the cleansing department was supposed to burn. The document contained journal entry from a doctor named Archibald McCandles. This introduction I think went on for far too long and introduced so many names that I hope in later prints they just straight out delete it or put it at the end of the book. It bombarded you with so many names and years and other details that it felt like you're reading something that you need to write down because it might appear on the test later. Thankfully, the story continues normally. We go back to the past following the found footage that was mentioned at the start. It's 1880s, and Archibald McCandle is the son of a farmer that, because of his mother's saving that she put under her bed, managed to get into medical school. Since the setting in the Victorian era, you know it's gonna be wild. But long story short, McCandles managed to go to medical school and he's actually smart enough to gain a lot of medical knowledge even with his background as a farmer. But it's Victorian era after all, and there's less awareness of posh people acting posh back then, since McCandle is poor to the level that when his mother are dead, he cannot even afford the stone for her burial site until they forget where she is buried decades later. When he gets to school, he was mocked and bullied by his old money peers. The one person who considers him a friend is one Godwin Baxter, the only person who stands up for McCandles when people make fun of his poorness. People keep away from both of them despite those two being the smartest student in the school. For McCandles, it's because he's poor, and for Godwin, it's because he's ugly. His finger is like cone placed on his hand, his voice is so high-pitched it gives people tinnitus every time he speaks, and his face is unfortunate. But McCandles hangs out with Godwin not because he sees him as a good friend, but because he's the only person that he can hang out with. And it shows when he challenged Godwin for being a know-it-all and to prove it to him that Godwin is not all talk. Godwin relents and shows him his work, which is two rabbits, but one of them had the top white and bottom black, and vice versa for the other. Godwin has swapped their upper and lower body with each other and they somehow live through it. Then for a while they go through their separate ways until Godwin returns and introduces McCandles to Bella Baxter. Bella is an unnamed woman that successfully performed unalive. The Godwin resurrected her by putting a baby's brain in her head, or more specifically, the woman's own baby. Both of them, instead of being horrified by this, had a different response. Godwin by creating a woman that he might be able to influence better, and McCandles by falling in love with the baby brain woman. Candles managed to make Bella fall in love with him, and because of that, Godwin's plan failed. But just like how Godwin's plan failed because of Candles, then both of their plans for her are ruined because Duncan Wenderburn, a playboy liar, came out of nowhere and managed to seduce Bella to elope with him. In some aspects, it is quite a good satirical comedy. It's nowhere near as good as Mother and Margarita that I've read last year, but there are still some good parts. The author did a great job with the dark and absurd comedy. Everything is so over the top that we can't separate ourselves from how absurd some of these story beats are. If I'm not mistaken, in comedy it's called stepping the line twice, where the comic will go so over the top to make fun of something that it changes from offensive to non-offensive if the comic know enough about the thing they are making fun of. And that's also the case with this book. While in the story it's basically a doll fighting over a woman with a literal child mind, at the same time it makes fun of how much men like the ones in the book can often aim for a more impressionable young woman or worse, younger. So it worked in a way that highlighted men's obsession on women's autonomy, but it failed in other ways because in the story there is no voice given to those same women that are supposed to be more highlighted. Bella is just a kid stuck in a grown woman body, and she's not really the main point of view that we follow most of the time. And then after we are introduced to those three main characters, we follow the story through letters that Duncan and Bella sent. Duncan's letter is so absurd that it becomes really funny to read actually, especially how he was being drained to dry by Bella to the point she didn't allow him to have too much activities, and she tells people she's an invalid so he can rest and they can do it more often. Then Duncan ends the letter by trying to pin Godwin as the devil himself with very absurd conspiracies. And that's unfortunately the last part where the story is enjoyable to read. After that letter, the story goes to Bella's point of view on her journey with Duncan, and it is where for some reason the storytelling took a massive dive in quality. Everything in this second part is so long-winded, whether the character either had too much smack that I don't know how the author did it, but the author somehow can make smack sounds boring, Or they, for some reason, have long discussion about religion and politics, and they're not that well written, unlike Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. First, there was the event where Duncan has fallen into gambling and it's so boring. Then, a conversation with a random American trying to prove that white supremacy is for the betterment of the world. Then, a conversation with a British socialist. There is a pot calling the kettle black during this part because of how the author put so much emphasis on the American guy being the white supremacist than talking about slavery like Britain's above all that when they are not. It feels like there's a lack of effort in this part because some of them are almost literally just bullet points. If you ever read Moby Dick, there's a part in it where the author suddenly went on and on about whales biology, economy, etc. This feels like that but somehow worse. They're just really uninteresting to read, and because of that, it feels like the author halted the story to a stop during this part. If we're in a car, everyone's being thrown to the front seat now because of the sudden stop. And because the storytelling becomes bad, a lot of flaws started to become more annoying. The way Bella talked, which are supposed to be charming, felt like it is stretched forever. The letters from her also seems to be really long apart, like either months or years, but Godwin and McCandless seems like they don't have a life outside of reading the letters, because the story only goes from them reading one letter from another to another. And the dialogue between the characters also feel like they fell off a cliff at this point because the letters are meant to be written by Bella, again a literal child brain, so some of the dialogue between characters for about half the story doesn't feel like a conversation between people anymore. It becomes a very long narration from Godwin that is somehow interrupted with other people talking. And also the second part really failed at giving the characters time that they need, because unlike the first part of the story, the second part didn't give the characters time that they deserve to be fleshed out more as a character. Unlike the first part of the story. In the first part, it is very clear who McCandless and Godwin Baxter are and why they do what they do. McCandless moved because he wants some recognition by getting out of the stigma of being a lower class in Victorian era Britain. This is also why he looked down on other people, even on Godwin, who are his only friend. Godwin moved because he also wants recognition, but unlike Candles that can get out of poverty with hard work, he's being looked down because of his voice and his face. Both he cannot change. That's why despite his wealth, status and intelligence, he still seeks for this recognition and trying to make a figure that will look up to him as a god, someone that will never judge him badly. It's why he created Bella and why she called him God. And compared to these two characters, Bella is a blank slate, which makes sense since, again, she's a literal child. It is in the second part of the story where we are supposed to flesh her out as a character as she learns more about the world and become more mature. But the author, for some inexplicable reason, just add more throwable side character here, and most of the storytelling that is through Bella's letter is comically filled with exposition. Because of this, it doesn't feel like Bella did anything because it's what her characters want to do, but because things just happen randomly. Things feel like they happen at random and people also appear at random. Most of these events feels both too short and too long because of how badly written it's being told. It even ends with a self-insert from the author after the story is already over, just to stretch the story a bit more. The book apparently has been adapted into a movie and I hear a lot of good things about it. I haven't watched it myself, but I hope they change a lot of the second and third part of the story, because have you ever read a story that feels disappointing because it had such a good premise but the quality took a nosedive the more the story goes? This book is that for me. There are a lot of things that it did really well. It's not only some great concept but also some great execution. They just need to make this last longer. I give this a 2. What do you think? Are you gonna read it? Did I miss anything? Leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it.